The last moments that I included in part 3 of my book, Losing Linda May, A Cancer Caregiving Memoir, happened on October 20th. To sum them up, my mom and I are FaceTiming. She lets me know the good news that she's officially completed outpatient rehabilitation. So she was fully on her road to recovery at that point, and the idea of me being a caregiver was very much not in the picture anymore. Part 4 officially begins on November 5th, and this represents the only major jump in time that I do throughout the entire book. As a reminder, I wanted this to be a chronological journey of my time as a primary caregiver for my mom, and so it was really important for me to keep it day to day. But in this instance, because my mom had finished up her physical therapy, I was no longer her caregiver at the moment. I didn't feel like it was necessary to keep these 2 weeks in the book, especially because not a lot happened in quick succession. There was a lot of sporadic moments, and they were really important, and I'm going to walk through what happened in this video, but they weren't important enough that I needed to keep it in the book because I thought it would really throw off the pace for the readers. In part 2 of the book, I came up with this idea to start a travel consulting firm where I would advise clients on how to leverage points and miles and credit card sign-up bonuses and elite status to achieve their travel aspirations. The business was called Turn. And so on October 21st, I actually had my first meeting with a potential client. My friend Brett, who's in the book, referred this person to me because he was very wealthy, but he only used debit cards. And he thought that this would be a perfect opportunity for me to get someone who does spend a lot of money and that I could help them really turn all of that expense into points that they could use to travel even more than they did already. So I met this person for lunch at a really fancy restaurant in Soho that I definitely could not afford, and I was praying that this person would pick up the check because truly it was way out of my league at that point, especially because I wasn't working at all. Throughout the course of our conversation, it became very clear that he was not remotely interested in my services. He was only interested in me as a romantic partner, and actually got kind of uncomfortable because he also knew Tyler, who I had gone home with earlier in part 3, and then also on the night of my birthday celebrations. And he was saying these really strange things that were very territorial about me and how Tyler should treat me well and things like that. So it was just a major fail from a business perspective and also really icky from a romantic perspective. A week later, I spoke at a business networking event and I was absolutely terrified. I kept rehearsing in the days before the 2-minute pitch that I had to give in front of everyone. And I thought it actually went pretty well, and I met a lot of people that day. But it really showed to me that I hated the idea of networking. I didn't like to try to sell myself and my services to other people. And that was the crux of this business. It was a consulting firm. So that realization was really discouraging to me because I had built this entire business with the idea that this could be this flexible outlet for me where I could make a lot of money, but then not have to be beholden to an employer, to a traditional work schedule, so that I'd be able to be there for my family if they ever needed me. I could do it remotely. And now, as I was putting myself out there, I just realized I wasn't really naturally inclined to be able to succeed in that type of a business. And that is part of the reason why later in the book, you will see that I just have no intention to really pursue making Turn a success. During the day on Halloween, there was actually a surprise engagement celebration for Ashley and her fiance, Adrian. So Ashley and I had dinner earlier in part 3 at Shake Shack when she told me about her engagement. She and I had known each other since elementary school. This was going to be the first wedding that I had ever attended of any of my friends. And so I was there with all of her loved ones and friends, and her mom, Heidi, was in town. And we actually spent a lot of time talking to each other because just like Ashley, I had known her mom for so long. And in a lot of ways, she was my little co-conspirator throughout the time that I was in middle school and high school. Anytime that I needed to do something covert behind my parents' back, like sell all my video games at a game exchange and get the money and then go to Best Buy and buy a toy or buy more video games, she would be the one who would offer to help. You know, she would drive me around and Ashley and I would be hanging out. And we also looked a lot alike because she was very tall and skinny and blonde. And so I kind of blended into their family in a way. So when I was out with them, oftentimes she was thought to be my mom. And so we just had this really nice bond. And as I was giving her an update on my mom, I mentioned how the root canal that she had had, which is talked about in the first moment for October 20th, wasn't successful. So that jaw pain she was experiencing wasn't alleviated because of the root canal. So she had actually scheduled an appointment with a TMJ specialist and also her oncologist. At this point, I had started getting really concerned that my mom had actually already relapsed and that the jaw pain was somehow connected to the cancer coming back. And my mom kept reiterating those anxieties too. Like that was constantly weighing on her. She was starting to sleep really poorly at this time. And as I'm telling all this to Heidi, she says to me, God works miracles, and that, my mom would stay in remission and that it would all go in a positive direction like it had been heading at that moment. And it was very strange for me to hear that from her because her father had cancer 3 separate times. He was currently in remission at that point, so he was alive, but he was a pastor. So I didn't understand how she could still believe in God when her father, who had dedicated his entire life to God, was stricken down by God on 3 separate occasions with cancer. So I just was really perplexed by how someone can be so in their own faith and bubble of, Christianity to not see the lack of logic and reason there. And obviously I didn't push back on Heidi in the moment. I didn't challenge her belief system, but it did linger with me as I was leaving that party, just how someone can have so much conviction in their faith, even though it seems very blind and illogical. On November 2nd, I learned that my mom's right eye wasn't functioning properly. These black splotches had appeared in her field of vision, and also the focus was off. I was talking to my sister about the latest development, and we were just really starting to speculate the worst case scenario, that the cancer had come back, and we didn't know what would come next because the autologous stem cell transplant was supposed to be the thing that would achieve a permanent remission. And since that failed, what would she do? And given our streak of bad luck that happened prior to, the positive stretch that we had where my mom finally got out of the hospital from her stem cell transplant, she went through rehabilitation, things seemed to be going in a good direction. But now that she was starting to have all these different symptoms again, it felt like that positive stretch was a blip in an otherwise really disastrous cancer narrative. And so, of course, we couldn't help but just worry about what was coming next. And then finally, on November 4th, I had a conversation with my mom. She let me know that she was officially diagnosed with TMJ after seeing the specialist. She would get a mouth guard that she could wear at night, and that would supposedly help her with the pain that she was experiencing and give her some relief. So good news in that department. But she would be having an MRI the next day to see if the cancer had come back, and then she would meet with her oncologist. So her anxiety was through the roof, so was mine, but I had to be strong for her, even though she was saying things to me like, Logan, if the cancer comes back, I don't know if I have the strength to do more treatment. I don't know if I could handle that. I don't know if I could go through with that. And so I am grappling with that reality that my mom may neglect to do treatment if the cancer does come back, and that would certainly seal her fate. But despite that, I need to be the one who is pepping her up, making her feel better about the situation, even though I'm absolutely terrified myself. So at the end of the call, I say to my mom, everything will be okay. Even though I had no way to know that, I could not predict the future. I was just projecting what I wanted to happen, even though I just was not certain at all that would be the case. And in the video I'll be releasing on November 5th, which coincides with the beginning of part 4 of Losing Linda May, which will pick up where I left off in this video about what happens next in the narrative. So hit subscribe, leave any questions in the comments. The link to the book is in the description. This 2-week gap is a perfect time to start reading if you haven't already. And so I will see you then next on November 5th.